He lost his leg in 1 second. But what his wife did next, no one expected. The doctors said he would never walk again. His friends disappeared. His own family whispered behind his back. But one woman stayed, and what she did changed everything. Subscribe to Soul of Kindness for more heart-touching stories. The morning of March 14th started like any other morning for Daniel Hayes. He woke up at 6, kissed his wife Sarah on the forehead while she slept, made himself a cup of coffee, and drove to the construction site where he worked as a senior engineer. Daniel was 34 years old, strong, confident, the kind of man who carried the weight of everything on his shoulders without complaining. He paid the bills. He fixed what was broken. He never asked for help, because in his mind, asking for help meant weakness. Sarah always told him, "Daniel, you don't have to do everything alone." He always smiled and said, "I'm fine, baby. I've got it." They had been married for 6 years. No children yet. They were saving money first, building a stable life. Sarah worked as a school teacher. She loved her students like they were her own. She was gentle, patient, and deeply kind. Daniel loved her more than he ever said out loud. That morning he left a note on the kitchen counter before she woke up. It said, "Dinner tonight, your favorite place. I have a surprise for you." He had booked a restaurant. He was going to tell her they had finally saved enough, that they could start trying for a baby, that life was finally beginning. He drove to the site with music playing and his windows down. He never made it to that restaurant. It happened at 8:47 in the morning. A heavy steel beam on the upper floor of the construction site had been improperly secured the night before. The crew that morning didn't check. No one checked. Daniel was walking below, reviewing blueprints, when the beam came loose. The workers above shouted, but it was too late. The beam came down and struck Daniel on his left side. He fell hard onto the concrete floor. The pain was immediate and unbearable. He tried to move, tried to stand, but his left leg was pinned beneath the weight of the beam and a section of collapsed scaffolding. Workers rushed to him. Someone called 911. Someone was screaming his name. Daniel's last memory before he passed out was staring at the pale blue sky above, the open construction site, and thinking about Sarah, still sleeping peacefully at home, unaware that her whole world was about to break. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. But those 11 minutes cost Daniel everything. Sarah was in the middle of teaching a class when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it the first time. The second time she stepped out. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Ma'am, are you the wife of Daniel Hayes?" Her hand tightened around the phone. "Yes, why? What happened?" "Please come to St. Michael's Hospital immediately. Your husband has been in a serious accident." She doesn't remember driving to the hospital. She doesn't remember parking the car. She only remembers running through the emergency doors and a nurse stopping her in the hallway before she could reach him. "Mom, please, I need you to stay calm." "Where is my husband? I need to see him." The nurse looked at her with soft, careful eyes, the kind of eyes that prepare you for something terrible. "The doctor will speak with you shortly, but I need you to know we did everything we could to save his leg. We were not able to." Sarah stood very still. His left leg had to be amputated, just below the knee. "He's in surgery now and he is stable, but—" Sarah didn't hear the rest. The hallway tilted. She reached for the wall. A nurse caught her before she fell. She sat on a plastic chair in a hospital corridor and stared at the floor and didn't make a sound. Because sometimes pain is too big for tears. Daniel woke up 3 days later. The first thing he saw was the white ceiling of a hospital room. The second thing he saw was Sarah, sitting in the chair beside his bed, her head resting on her arms, asleep. She looked exhausted. Her hair was messy. There were dark circles under her eyes. She was still wearing the same clothes she'd had on when she'd rushed to the hospital 3 days ago. She had not gone home. Daniel looked down at his leg, at what was left of it. A bandaged stump ending just below his knee. He stared at it for a long time. When Sarah finally woke and looked up and saw his eyes open, she didn't say anything at first. She stood up slowly, walked to the side of the bed, and took his hand in both of hers. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey," he said. His voice was cracked and dry. His eyes were hollow. "I lost my leg," he said, like he was still trying to understand it. "I know." "Sarah! Daniel, look at me." He turned to look at her. Her eyes were full of tears she was refusing to let fall. "You are still here," she said quietly. "Everything else we will figure out, together." He looked away, because he didn't believe her, not yet. The weeks that followed were the darkest of Daniel's life. He came home from the hospital in a wheelchair, the man who used to carry heavy beams, who used to jog 5 miles every morning, who used to stand at the top of a building and survey everything below him. That man now couldn't get from the bedroom to the bathroom without help. He stopped talking. He stopped eating properly. He refused physical therapy twice. He threw a glass across the room one evening when a rehabilitation counselor came to the house. "I'm not doing this," he said. "What's the point?" His friends visited in the beginning. Then slowly the visits stopped. His former boss came once, said the company was very sorry, and left an envelope of money that Daniel never opened. His older brother called a few times, and then the calls became less and less frequent. One night, Sarah came into the bedroom and found Daniel sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "I heard you crying last night," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I wasn't crying." "Daniel." He didn't answer. "You keep pushing me away," she said softly. "You think you're protecting me, but you're not. You're just breaking alone instead of letting me help you break." He still didn't answer. She didn't leave. She sat in the dark with him for 2 hours without saying another word. Because sometimes love is not about fixing. Sometimes love is just about staying. 3 months after the accident, something happened that no one expected. Sarah had quietly enrolled Daniel in an outpatient rehabilitation program at St. Michael's, the same hospital where he'd had surgery. She hadn't told him. She had simply booked the appointment, arranged the transport, and on a Tuesday morning, she came into the bedroom and said, "Get dressed. We're going out." "I'm not going anywhere." "Daniel, get dressed." Something in her voice was different that morning. Firm, not pleading, not soft, just certain. He went. At the rehabilitation center, his therapist was a man named Marcus, a tall, quiet man in his 40s who walked with a visible limp. Daniel noticed it immediately. "Car accident," Marcus said before Daniel could ask. 13 years ago. Lost the lower half of my right leg." Daniel looked at him. "I know what you're thinking," Marcus said, sitting down across from him. "You're thinking, what's the point? Your old life is gone. The man you were is gone, and you don't know who the man in the wheelchair is." Daniel's jaw tightened, because it was exactly what he had been thinking. "I thought the same thing," Marcus said. "And then I realized something. The accident didn't end my story. It just forced me to rewrite it." That was the day Daniel cried for the first time since the accident. Not in the dark, alone, but in a small therapy room, in front of a stranger who understood, and a wife who had driven him there because she refused to watch him disappear. Recovery was not a straight line. There were good days and terrible days. Days when Daniel worked hard in therapy and came home exhausted but almost hopeful. And days when the darkness came back and he sat silent and untouchable. But Sarah never wavered. She woke up early to prepare his meals according to the therapist's nutrition plan. She rearranged the entire house so he could move freely. She learned about prosthetic limbs and researched options and sat in every single doctor's appointment, taking notes in a small notebook she carried everywhere. She also went back to work, teaching during the day, then coming home and helping Daniel with his evening therapy exercises without ever making him feel like a burden. One evening Daniel watched her from across the room. She was grading papers at the kitchen table, her reading glasses on, a pen behind her ear. She looked tired. She always looked tired now. "Sarah," he called. She looked up. "Why are you still here?" She took her glasses off slowly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he stopped. "I'm not the man you married anymore. I can't provide the way I used to. I can't." She stood up and walked over to him. She crouched down in front of his wheelchair so her eyes were level with his. "The man I married," she said, "was kind, stubborn, proud, and deeply, deeply loved by me." She touched his face. None of that changed. Not one single thing. He broke again, right there in the kitchen, and she held him the way you hold someone when you mean to never let go. 1 year and 4 months after the accident, Daniel Hayes stood up. Not in a hospital, not in a therapy room. He stood up in a school gymnasium in front of 120 students, wearing his prosthetic leg, fitted and adjusted over 6 careful months, and he walked to the front of the room. Sarah had invited him to speak to her class, a lesson about resilience, about what it really means to be strong. He stood at the front of that gymnasium and looked out at those young faces and said, "I used to think strength meant not needing anyone. I was wrong. The strongest thing I ever did was let someone love me when I had nothing left to give." He looked at Sarah standing at the back of the room. She was smiling, that quiet, soft smile that had been there every single day. In the hospital corridor, in the dark bedroom, in the therapy room, in the kitchen, always there. "My wife stayed," he continued, his voice steady despite the emotion rising in his chest. "She stayed when I pushed her away. She stayed when I gave her every reason to leave. And she saved my life, not the doctors, not the surgery, not the prosthetic." He paused. "She saved my life by simply refusing to stop believing in me." There was silence in the gymnasium, and then, from somewhere in the middle of the crowd, a child started clapping. And then another, and then the whole room. That evening, Daniel and Sarah sat on their porch together. He reached over and took her hand. She leaned her head on his shoulder. The note he had written on the morning of the accident: "Dinner tonight. Your favorite place. I have a surprise for you." He had found it months later, still sitting on the kitchen counter where she had left it untouched. He had kept it. He still kept it, in his wallet, not as a reminder of what he had lost, but as a reminder of the morning before everything changed, and how the woman beside him had made sure that everything that truly mattered survived. Some accidents break your body, but the right love, the kind that stays in the dark, the kind that doesn't keep score, the kind that shows up every single day without applause. That love doesn't just heal you, it rebuilds you. And sometimes, the life built after the breaking is more beautiful than anything you had before.